Racism, civil rights, and social justice. We felt that in this time where there's a lot of things going on, it would be really great to engage with films and talk about films that may be relevant to what's going on in this time frame. So to jump into things, I wanted everyone to introduce themselves and say, again, what branches that they work at and where you can find them, and just so you get to know all of us a little better. Again, my name is Elizabeth Junwa, and if everyone wants to jump in and say who you guys are and give everyone an introduction.
Hello, my name is Lauren Roots, and I work at the Oxon Hill branch.
Hello, I'm Rachel Troyanos, and I work at the Bowie branch.
Hi, my name is Cinnamon Better, and I work at the Oxon Hill branch.
Okay, well, now that you know all of us, I'm just going to jump right into the questions that I have to guide us through our conversation today. So the first question is, what is a film you remember watching that the first film that you remember watching that dealt with the theme of racism? And I guess I can start with that one. A film that just keeps coming up as I was thinking of these questions is a movie called The Color of Friendship. It's a Disney movie, like a Disney Channel movie. So it's geared towards kids. And I don't think it's the first film I remember. It's probably not the first film I saw, but it's the first one I really remember just recognizing like, oh, this is like what kind of starting to understand what the themes of racism and discrimination was. And a little bit about the film. It's about a family who lives in America, and the father in the family is a congressman, I think, and he is very into the South African anti-apartheid movement. And so it's really a story of two families. So it's this man and his family and the young girl that's in his family, his daughter. And then it's a family of a white girl who lives in South Africa who wants to come to America to do basically like a study abroad program. And she's a white girl from South Africa. So she's living in the apartheid South Africa and has those opinions of apartheid South Africa, and her learning from the Black family she ends up living with. And I just thought that film to me was just like kind of the start of me understanding, I mean, on film and on I guess on television, what those themes look like. So I don't know if anyone has seen that movie. Rachel, you've seen it.
Yeah, bringing me back.
Yeah, it's an old one. Like that's Disney Channel, like old school Mickey Mouse. Yeah, 90s. Yeah, that's one. So
I don't really remember that one in particular, Elizabeth, but the one that I do remember is a product of Disney. And so that film would be Pocahontas, that racism and the division, which was also a 95 film. And I would say, first off, that as a young, impressionable fifth grader of the time, I was like obsessed with this film for most likely the wrong reasons. So first, I won't say that there were the wrong reasons. The first one was because there was a character there that had brown skin like me, and she's on screen and she's independent and she's doing all this amazing stuff. Like she's running through the forest, and I just thought that was so fantastic. And then also she could talk to trees and animals, and I wanted to be able to talk to trees and animals. So that's the part that I feel was maybe a little less reason to be obsessed, but I just thought that was phenomenal. And that's all that I wanted to do in my life. So I hadn't hit full on puberty, so I wasn't concerned about boys as much. I just kind of glazed over the romance. I was more interested in the animal talking. But although all of those things were present, and obviously, although Disney presents a very watered down and revisionist depiction of historical story, I remember very specifically watching the part with John Radcliffe as he's like suiting up and riling up the settlers with the song Savages. And they're preparing to wage a war on these indigenous people. And I remembered some of the lyrics, but I actually like ran to look them up, and like some of the things that were said, like filthy little heathens, only good when dead, vermin, barely even human. And then you've got like fires in the scenery, you've got battle gear, you have men sneering and cheering. And I remember just feeling kind of this thickening and sinking feeling in my stomach. And I'm fairly certain that I cried during that particular scene. And I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea that being other meant that that person was inhumane or evil. So I think that was my first experience.
In a children's movie though, like when you really think about how it's been ingrained in children since the beginning, you know, and watching that.
Yeah, it's so interesting you mentioned Pocahontas. Like now you're saying it, it's like, yeah, that is one.
Right.
Like it's like,
Right.
yeah, it's probably the first one that really explicitly says it in a kids movie. But it's and we can probably talk about this later as we talk about more films, but there really is something to seeing something as a kid.
Right.
And you might be starting to have different experiences and you don't really know what they are and what they mean. And then when you're adult, you rewatch it and you're like,
so many hidden messages.
Yeah, like hidden things, or it's not even really hidden. It's just you don't have the experience or even the knowledge or the words to know what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Because like now I'm like, yeah, Pocahontas definitely, like I want to change my answer. Pocahontas was definitely one of the first ones. And I think
same time period.
Right.
So.
And I think also it's something with all of these movies is representation, because I think in film, whether fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of the people, Black people you see are always in kind of films like this that deal with racism or social justice or civil rights. And so a lot of times it's like rarely do you see a Black person or a brown person in these films when it's not dealing with something like this. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it shows how representation is important. Because when I think of Pocahontas, that definitely is one of the first brown people I saw in Disney, period. And I remember I think what you were kind of alluding to about the watching it for the wrong reason. I had a Pocahontas t-shirt. I had a Pocahontas like doll. And the big thing about the doll was that you could braid the hair. Like Nico, the character, would braid the hair. And I was like, oh, like she gets her hair braided too, like stuff like that. So definitely representation, I think, is a theme, is a part of this as well. Anyone else had a film that they wanted to mention or talk about that was like their first, or we done with that topic?
I mean, I can talk about, I think you're right that a lot of the Disney movies were probably the first ones, but I didn't really realize at the time. And so the first one I really remember thinking like, this is about racism. And it's a really basic film, but it's Crash, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen. And that one just really stuck with me for a while and broke my heart a lot. And Elizabeth, you had said that was another one where if you rewatch it when you're older, you see it differently. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on that, because I haven't seen it since I was younger and very impacted by it.
Yeah, so this is actually, it was going to relate to another question, but I saw Crash in high school, and when I saw it, I actually really liked it. Like I thought it was like really deep.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
Like it really, I think the ending really like touched me, like for a lot of different reasons. Like the way they showed, because it kind of like, it's not a happy ending in the end, but it kind of has like this happy-ish ending in the end, kind of, not really. But so I liked it when I first saw it, basically. But as an adult, now that I know way more about film, know way more about depictions in film, and also depictions of and discussions about racism and civil rights, and understanding that a lot of those things can be very simplistic. And so now as an adult, I realize that Crash has a very simplistic message to a very complex topic. It gives very easy answers to something that is something that doesn't have easy answers to. And then on top of that, it is something that was created by someone who is not Black, who has not experienced racism in that way. So again, as an adult, I have all these criticisms and things that I could say about it that I didn't have when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Or maybe I was just starting to understand those things, but I definitely didn't have that knowledge in high school. I didn't have it until college and beyond. So,
Same.
So definitely, I mean, I remember how I felt when I first saw Crash, so I have like some, that feeling, but then I have like I am an adult now, and I see things as an adult now feeling towards that movie. I don't know, Lauren or Cinnamon, if you've seen Crash or have any thoughts about that film at all.
I seen it a long time ago, and I can't really remember how it made me feel at the time. But I think it's like Lauren said, like when she watched Pocahontas, she didn't really connect with the romance in the story. She connected more with the fact that Pocahontas could talk to the animals, and she was just so connected to nature. And I think it's like you said, Elizabeth, as you go through life, you kind of gain all of these different experiences. You read more, you learn more through interactions with different people. And you go back and watch these movies and say, like, wow, I can connect to that in this way because I've gone through a certain situation. Or I know how this will make me feel because I'm at a stage now in my life where I can connect to that situation in a different way. So I don't know. I think that we get out of film what we're supposed to get out of it for the moment that we are in our lives. And I feel like a lot of times with Disney movies, you go back and watch as an adult, and you're just like, what? How did I not catch that when I watched it the first 5 times when I was 5 years old? Like,
Yikes.
For sure.
But my film, the first film that I remember watching, and mine is really dark. It's called A Time to Kill. It stars Samuel L. Jackson, who's one of my favorite actors, and Matthew McConaughey. The film opens with the rape of a young girl by 2 white men. They are caught and they are about to go to trial, but the father, who's Samuel L. Jackson, he just has this, I guess, innate feeling that he knows that they're not gonna serve any time. They're gonna get off. It's Mississippi. They're white. The girl is Black, and so he ends up murdering them at the courthouse. So the movie, pretty much the plot is him being on trial for the murder of his daughter's rapist, and it's in the Deep South. His lawyer is a white man who is Matthew McConaughey. The film is it's really heartbreaking, but it was made at a time, I guess, when things weren't as advanced as they are now. I don't want to say advanced, but we were just at a different time back then. It was made in 95. But a lot of the themes that are in there, the Matthew McConaughey had a lot of problems at home representing this Black man. Everybody is entitled to representation, but because they're in the Deep South, he's white and Samuel L. Jackson is Black, it was kind of like, why are you representing this person who did these horrible things? So there's a lot to pick apart in that film. I watched it when I was probably like 15 or 16, so I really had no business watching that movie. And then I watched it again as an adult, and it was just as bad. Like it broke my heart even more, actually. So that was my first film that I remember.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that film. I had mentioned when we were talking before this that I've seen clips of that film, but I haven't seen the whole film because a teacher in high school decided to show us a clip of the film. And And so we watched the clip, and now I'm thinking about it. I remember I didn't even watch the clip of the film in class. I remember I put my head down like this the whole time that he showed the scene that he was trying to show. And so it's interesting because now I'm like, maybe I should go back and watch that, because I am older and I can think of things more critically and look at things, especially again in the time that we're in, watch these things and maybe have more strength to watch it, or more of a critical eye to watch it. Because I'd be curious. Any Samuel L. Jackson movie in the 90s, I probably should watch the whole thing, right? Okay, so the next question, I'm going to kind of adjust it a little bit, because the question I had was, what was a film that really impacted you? But I think I'll go a step further and say, what's a film on this topic that, deals with all of these themes that we're talking about that you feel is like a really good one, like one that you really you watch and you're like, that's it. That's something that just, for whatever reason, you feel like is a good one. And I'll let someone start with that one. Someone else start. Yeah, maybe that's a hard one. I feel like, and I'll give mine. I think this is one that unfortunately is older, because it's been a few years since it's come out, like 30 years, but it still is so relevant, and it's Do the Right Thing. I feel like that film is like the template for any film that deals with racism, discrimination, themes of police brutality. Spike Lee joint, so a movie that was directed by Spike Lee, came out, I don't want to say the wrong date, so I won't say, I think it was 89, but it's a film about, really it's a film where you're just kind of watching this guy walk around town and living his life, and then someone in the midst of like angst in a day, someone is killed, and at the hands of the police. And I just feel like it's just like, if there's a film that you should watch on this, it's that one. And again, it came out late 80s, early 90s, and even today it feels like it's very relevant. And so that's probably like my film right there that I feel like is just just as a film, a good film that you should watch and see. Mm-hmm.
So I recently watched that one, Elizabeth. And I mean, I'd seen it before. I'd seen it years ago. But I did rewatch it actually in preparation for this. And I am both amazed and horrified that things have not changed from then to now. When I watch, I remember looking at the mayor and looking at Mother's Sister as our older generation. And then I remember looking at Smiley and Radio Raheem and Bugging Out as our younger generation. And I see in that younger generation the same fire, the same fury, the same anger, and not knowing the best way to explain or get that out. And so it leads to a sort of destruction, which I don't know. It really is a difficult film to watch. It's very difficult to watch.
I think when you talk about destruction, it's not a bad thing. But like you said, sometimes you have those feelings about what's going on around you. You don't necessarily know how to react. You just have these emotions and you're upset and you want things to change. You're frustrated because it's like, we're just living our lives, you know? Yeah. And in the film, you know, the person that gets killed by the police hasn't even done anything.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I think, you know, there's no doubt about that this topic is an emotional one. And why I wanted to do this viewers advisory is because I feel as though something that film and television does, it provides narratives sometimes that can, if nothing else, can provide empathy, because sometimes it gives you a view to see what you wouldn't see in, even sometimes in maybe documentaries. You might not get that same emotion or that feeling that I feel films and fiction or nonfiction films can provide us. Something I started watching today, and I actually have been avoiding it because and this is something we can kind of talk about too, is because these narratives are so powerful, sometimes they can be too powerful, and they can feel almost like you're taking in some type of trauma. And so there's some films that I like strategically either, and I like films so much, so I like strategically have to like, okay, today is the day. I'm gonna get my tissues ready. I'm going to like
preparation.
Right. I'm going to like decide that I'm going to watch this and take this in. And so one of those things was when they see us. I love Ava DuVernay as a director, and I watch probably everything else that she's done. But I have avoided watching this particular one, partly because I watched the documentary on the Central Park Five. So if you don't know that story about 5 young Black and Latino boys who were convicted of a crime that they didn't commit, and the struggle that they dealt with in then the years of time it took for them to eventually be exonerated for the crime that they were convicted of. And so I knew the story, so I was like, I don't know if I need to watch it, but what I've seen so far of When They See Us, it gives like this extra like punch to your heart, like of like, man, like this is the context that is sometimes outside of these narratives that are, factual, neutral, right. like that kind of make you feel like you're just kind of like this, like it's very scientific almost, and not that there's not the need for that as well, because it's important, especially when you're trying to gain knowledge. But I think sometimes, especially now, there's like this need for compassion and understanding that narratives can provide us, that visual movies and films can provide if it's done in the right way. So I just want to put that out there because I feel like it can be, it's not easy to talk about this stuff, but sometimes like there's great things that can come out of it. And I mentioned, and I feel like I'm just going off on a tangent, so but like I mentioned Do the Right Thing, because as much as it's a difficult watch, like there's so many moments of like joy and happiness that you see throughout that film. Like just like seeing guys on the corner like hanging out, like seeing the main character like look for his girlfriend, like, and they're kind of like back and forth. Like there's so much of that, like, and I'll say it in this time, Black joy, that I feel like sometimes gets missed in the conversations about these films. Like there's a lot of joy in these films as well. And I don't want to, and that's another point I want to put out there, is that it's not just like this one like struggle narrative. Like there's, I know this is said a lot, but like society's people, Black people, are not a monolith. So there's a wide range of emotions that you deal with. And I sometimes feel that films can show that. So that's mine. soapbox and I will hop off of it. So yeah, do the right thing. That's I just want to put that out there again.
I think that's definitely an important takeaway, that these films have a lot more to offer than just, trauma and struggle and pain. Like you said, when they see us, you have to kind of mentally prepare yourself to see that. I personally have not watched it. Like you said, I love Ava DuVernay, but I just, like, all the talk surrounding it was enough for me. With documentaries, like you said, there's fact and there's like kind of a straight talk, but with movies there's more like drama, like you get to see things reenacted, and I think that stirs something up inside of you, where instead of like you're reading it in a book or you're seeing people talk about it in a documentary, you're actually like seeing it in front of you, what's happened to these people, even though it's a dramatization. So yeah, I cannot watch When They See Us. The last movie that I watched that was directed by Ava DuVernay was Selma, and I actually went to the theater to see that. And the scene that kind of impacted me the most, even though the whole movie wasn't about struggle and sadness, there were some highlights of joy and triumph in the movie. But the Bloody Sunday bridge scene was what really broke me, and I kind of decided then that I wouldn't see any more movies involving trauma that would make me cry about something sad. Like, I want a happy cry, I want to cry because they finally like won, or like they finally got over, or something good has happened. And sometimes I feel like the struggle kind of overshadows the joy in some ways. Even though there is joy, it's kind of overshadowed for me, at least. So I know that When They See Us was great. I've also seen, I think it was directed by Ava DuVernay, 13th, which is a documentary as well.
Yeah.
So she does great work, and I know that the series was amazing. I just can't watch it and bring myself to watch it.
I've seen When They See Us, and one of the things, Elizabeth, I just kind of want to go back to what you shared about how sometimes getting out of that clinical approach of the documentary and coming into more of a dramatization. One of the things that I really, really appreciated about that was that Ava DuVernay made sure that we remembered that these were boys.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed us the things that they did, like playing. They were interested in music. They were interested in girls. We saw the other side of these boys where that wasn't awarded to them before.
Yeah.
And they weren't talked about or treated as if they were boys before. And so I think watching that, like I had a deep appreciation for that, because I also watched the documentary. And I believe it's Ken Burns' daughter that wrote the book as well. And I read that. And it was, both of those are difficult. They were a necessary watch and a necessary read, but I had a huge appreciation for that film, for the depiction of them as being boys.
All right.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to mention that I thought they used actors that looked really young, and that just like extra broke your heart because they were like little boys.
Yeah.
Man. Okay. So our conversation is like changing all of my questions. I just like, I have all these questions. We're not even gonna do this. Because I guess I could pose this question. I kind of was alluding to Crash with this question, so I'll just put that out there now. What are some films you don't like that deal with this topic? Like anything that you've seen, and even if it doesn't explicitly deal with this topic, if you feel like it handled it in a not so great way, and if you do, and if you don't, that's okay. But again, as an adult watching Crash, it is not what I would suggest to watch. If you are trying to really do the work of understanding racism, Crash is not the movie that I would suggest that you watch. If you're trying to watch an entertaining movie that weaves different narratives together in a fairly eloquent way, watch Crash. To handle your knowledge of the topics and the themes that we're talking about today, I don't know if Crash is the one for you. So, yeah.
I don't have a movie, but I have a show.
Yeah, shows, film, TV.
Okay.
It's good too.
So I recently read the book Little Fires Everywhere, and they adapted it to TV. The first thing that I noticed straight away is that they made Kerry Washington's character Black. In the book, it never says anything about her being Black. It doesn't say that she's white, but I feel like
I didn't know that.
Yes, they made her Black in the show. So one of like the opening scenes of the show is Elena, I can't remember what actress plays her.
Reese Witherspoon.
Reese Witherspoon's character calls the police on Elena and her daughter sleeping. Kerry Washington's character sleeping in her car. And if she was white, I felt like it wouldn't have necessarily been a situation where she felt like the person didn't belong. Her reason for calling the police was that she thought that Kerry Washington's character might be in danger, or she was worried about her safety or something, and that's why she called the police and said, hey, there's this woman sleeping in her car in a parking lot, can you go check it out? They eventually become friends or associates, what have you, and throughout the whole show, Kerry Washington's character is just so difficult. She doesn't really have a hold on her emotions. She is very, every time she comes on the screen, it looks like she's about to cry. I just didn't appreciate I didn't understand why she had to be Black. What I really liked about the book is that it was kind of ambiguous about race. We assumed that she was white because most of the people in the community that she had recently relocated to was white, so she felt comfortable enough to be amongst these people. So I don't know, Kerry Washington's character had no real redeeming qualities for me in the show, and I was really disappointed about that because in the book she had a lot more depth, a lot more rewarding qualities about her than she did in the show.
That's interesting because as not reading the book, I feel like I got a different feeling.
Oh no, you didn't see the show?
No, I didn't read the book. I saw the show, so I've seen the show.
I hope I didn't spoil it for you.
No, you didn't at all.
Okay.
So I'd love to hear someone else's take on if they've seen the show, because I did have a different view and I feel like I've talked a lot.
So I haven't read the book either, Elizabeth, and I already hated the ending. But now that I know what you just told me, that the character in the book, they just made her Black in the TV show, I hate it. Like, I hate it even more. And I thought all the characters were very stereotypical, and they really pushed the stereotypes. And I mean, I understand why they did that, to like get a point across.
Right.
But it just kind of fell flat for me. And I'm just really mad now.
Yeah, I wanted to enjoy the show. It wasn't a bad show. Like I said, the first thing that threw me off was that they made Kerry Washington's character Black. Was that they made, I can't even remember the girl's name. It was Elena and Mia. They made Mia Black. And in the book, she wasn't Black. So that kind of took me back. Right, and then Elena, she was just kind of coming off as really bigoted. You know, one of the first things that she said to Mia was, oh, you know that the school, Shaker Heights High or something like that. You know, this is one of the very first schools that was integrated. My mom had a hand in that. And then she would tell her daughter's boyfriend, you know, I voted for Obama, right? And it was just like.
You want a pat on the back?
Right, it was just a lot. And I feel like the book did not do that. So the show just kind of like threw me off a lot.
Oh, I'm off the train now.
Did you read the show or the book at all? Or like read the book or see the show?
Me?
Lauren.
Oh. No, I haven't had a chance too. Cinnamon, I know you've been encouraging me to do so.
Yes, the book was great.
And I mean, I've read a material by Celeste Ng before, but I haven't gotten to that particular one. And I'm kind of kicking myself because I found a nice used copy right before we hit quarantine, and I had some other books on my pile, and I just slid that one back, and I really shouldn't have, because now I'm regretting it. I really do want to read it and be able to have these rich discussions.
Right.
Yeah, now I need to read the book, because I like when Black people are casted in things, especially if there's not anything explicitly saying that they're not. So I just thought, okay, cool. Like, and I didn't know this about the book. I just was like, cool, sure. Also, I'm from Ohio, and I say this because I'm not from Cleveland where the story takes place, but I went to school really close to there, and I have a lot of friends who are. And so I was talking about the show with a friend who lives in Cleveland now and grew up there. And she was talking about how a lot of the things that people do and say in the show are very accurate to Cleveland. Like, people do say that about that high school, like, you know, that people do say, like, the way people act and interact, especially where the character Elena lives in it's an affluent area, and Cleveland, you know, it's just how they frame Cleveland in the show is accurate, basically.
Okay.
So, in even the interactions, especially for the time frame, except for a couple of things which were really off, like the hairstyles of people like didn't match the era. Like, so this is a spoiler, sorry for the spoilers in this, but so no, like, so there's a character, he's a Black high school student in the show, and he has a high top fade, and the show is supposed to take place like Dawson's Creek era, so it's like an era when no one would have had that hairstyle still. So so there's stuff like that, but ultimately we were talking about how like some of the interactions were very accurate. So for me, I thought a lot of how Mia's character was acting was hilarious, because, I mean, to me, it was great to see a woman, and specifically a Black woman, kind of tell another white woman about herself, like in many instances. Like, it was kind of like, yeah, that's true. Like, I mean, you'd have to see the show to understand what I'm saying, but like, so, but now, like, you're giving me like a whole different.
She was very outspoken.
Yes, so I liked that she was outspoken.
She was being very difficult from the very beginning.
And you're saying it's not like that in the book at all?
No, she was very, well, she wasn't very warm towards Elena, I will say that. But I think that what threw me off was that in the book, like I said, it's not explicitly said whether she's white or Black, so you just assume that she's white because she's in this white community. But it threw me off because now she's Black, and now she's being super difficult, and now Elena is like, well, what's wrong with her? I've been nothing but nice. And it's just like,
right. And it's frustrating now because that's not how the character was in the book, because why can, I mean, Kerry Washington's character could have been, or Mia in the book or the show could have been how she was in the book, you know what I mean? So that is something, like how representations of people kind of change depending on the writing and the decision.
Celeste Ng had a hand in the show's production as well, so I was hoping that it would be super close to the actual book, but it wasn't like 100% off. But some elements of the show, I was like, wait a minute, that's not the book. Especially the ending. The ending was not like it was in the book.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked about quite a few different movies and films and what has impacted us and not impacted us. Was there anything else anyone wanted to add, or any films or anything you wanted to say and add before I get into the last question here? Nope. Okay. So, my last question for you guys is a two-parter. What is something you recommend, and what is on your to-watch list? So whoever wants to jump in.
I can go ahead and take that. So some things that I would recommend would be I Am Not Your Negro, which is the documentary about James Baldwin. I recently watched that and I really enjoyed that. It is available on Canopy. Another Canopy documentary would be Whose Streets, which is an unflinching look at the Ferguson uprising. Fruitvale Station was another one that I really, really appreciated, and again watched recently. And finally, The Hate You Give would be another one to watch. I have one film that I have been looking for, but I don't seem to be able to find it as a stream, so I think I would have to purchase it as a DVD. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's a movie from the 70s, and it's about the riots in Watts. It's called Killer of Sheep, and so it's on my watch list. And if I can't find it, I was able to find a copy of the transcript or the script itself, so I'll be reading through that.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, I can go. So some recommendations of things to watch. When They See Us, I recently watched American Son and Just Mercy, and Just Mercy gutted me. It's hard to watch right now as well. So if you're up for that, I also really I enjoyed Fruitvale Station in that I didn't realize that was a true story when I watched it, and so that educated me. And I was like, wow, that's absurd. I really want to watch Fences. It takes place in Pittsburgh. I haven't found where it is either. And I really want to watch Loving. So those are mine.
Okay. Even though I don't think the show was as very accurate to the book, I would recommend watching Little Fires Everywhere, because it does show the dynamic of two different families, and how those families kind of, I guess, interact with one another, and how they kind of operate as a unit, given their different difficulties within those relationships. Also, The Help. I feel like that's like a classic, kind of. Get Out.
Your face says something, Elizabeth. Sorry, Cinnamon, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You didn't like The Help?
No. No, I didn't. No, okay, can I say why?
Sure, yes, please.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
So,
it's okay.
I actually specifically didn't want to go too much into this question because I feel like it would have just been me like ragging on movies. And I like films. I watch films. And I love, when I say that I love Viola Davis, like as an actress, like, and I actually feel that she should have gotten the Oscar for, as Best Actress for The Help. So there's like, so it's not because I feel like it's a bad movie. It's, there's a trend in films, and I think this goes to our theme as well, where a lot of these films that deal with topics of racism and social justice and civil rights, for whatever reason, it's like the narrative, it's called The Help, but it's really about Emma Stone's character. Like it's about how she through the story of these Black women, becomes a writer. Like that's what the movie really ultimately is about. I mean, so I think maybe I'm making, like I feel like maybe I'm being a little unfair to the film, but I do feel like there's a lot of films that do that. Like Green Book is another example of a film that it's called Green Book, but really it's about the white man who was a chauffeur for this Black man who was an entertainer and a renowned entertainer. So it's like you don't really, so I push back on movies like that just because like I think it's important to. I'm
glad you brought it up. Since you told me that, I see it a lot more, and I'm like, this isn't about you. Like, why is this about you? It's not about you. So I've noticed it a lot more now, and I think that that was a helpful way to look at movies.
I mentioned I also, because again, I watch a lot of movies and I watch a lot of interviews with actors and actresses. And one of the things that Viola Davis actually said about The Help was that she had wanted to have more to do in the film. Like, she wanted a little bit more time to be focused on her character, which I feel makes sense. So again, maybe it's wrong for me to say that I dislike the film, because I feel like that makes it sound like I think it's a bad film and you shouldn't watch it, which I don't. I actually think you should watch the film and you should read the book. But I think it really goes back to what I had said earlier about watching things as when I was younger. I probably wouldn't think that deeply about it. And when The Help first came out, I was in college or getting ready to go into college. So I was starting to learn more stuff. So I think also when I think about The Help, it's from, I won't say radical, but a more informed mindset. So
I thank you.
This is absolute, like, again, I'm not saying this to negate anything you're saying, Cinnamon.
No, I don't think you are.
Yeah, because I'm like, I actually think you should watch it. But
because I haven't watched it in a while. I did like it when I watched it, but like you said, sometimes you don't, like, not everybody sees a movie the same way.
The same thing, like, now everything that you said about Little Fires Everywhere is making you rethink the whole show, the whole entire show now. And now, just even talking about The Help, like, there's definitely moments where you're rooting so strongly for the domestic workers, the help in this movie. So again, I don't think it's something that should just be completely written off, but I'm critical. So continue talking, Cinnamon. I'm just gonna mute myself. I'm not even gonna say anything else.
You're fine. A movie that's on my watch list is The Last Black Man in Philadelphia. I think I've seen
San Francisco?
San Francisco, yeah. The Advisor you guys did last week, you mentioned it, and that's on my watch list. I don't really watch many movies, honestly. I see them, but I don't really watch a lot of them, I guess. So yeah.
Great. Is it, like, I feel like I talk too much, so should I still give recommendations?
Yes, please.
One that I feel like I'd be repeating some of the things that you're saying, so I don't want to do that. So something historical that I suggest people watch, or has a historical point of view, is Malcolm X. I feel like reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, like, I say it all the time, it like changed my life, honestly. So I first would read the book, but then another Spike Lee movie that is expertly done, and I think people should watch it, and I think would be an education, because there's a lot of people who don't really know a lot about Malcolm X and his history, so I suggest that. Another one I suggest is a TV show. It's a newer TV show, and it's called The Watchmen.
I want to see that.
And I'm actually surprised that I'm suggesting that people watch it, because it's something that took me a while to get through, because the show, sorry to be a spoiler a little bit, but it starts off with depicting the bombing of the neighborhood of Greenwood, which many people might know was Black Wall Street. And so I was skeptical as I can be about knowing that a white director was like putting that on screen, and I was just very skeptical why it was being done and what the choices were. Was it being thoughtfully done? So I was like a little nervous. But having watched the whole show, I just really, really suggest people watch it, especially now, because it deals with police, it deals with racism, it deals with people having to wear masks. So it's kind of crazy that it has all of those things that in one show. So I suggest it.
Where can you watch it?
It's an HBO show. And I guess that maybe some of these go without saying, that most of these movies, I think we've mentioned, you can determine the maturity level of whoever's watching it, if they can watch it, because Watchmen is an HBO show.
Right.
And it has HBO themes. HBO, so proceed with caution. I know that, Lauren, before we had our conversation, you talked about when they see us, you had provided some resources that people can, so if there are teenagers that are watching this, there are some resources for younger audiences for when they see us. So
I would recommend parents and teachers take a look at it, but Ava DuVernay's, I think it's Array, they actually have they've provided almost like a discussion guide for each episode in the series. And so I will drop a link in our chat there for people to click on if they are interested in learning a little bit more about that one, for sure.
I really enjoyed Watchmen.
Yeah, it was really good. I just finished it a few days ago, and I was like, I think I'm gonna talk about this because I was surprised.
Regina King did an amazing job.
Yeah, I mean, she's a great actress anyway.
Right.
And actually, the film that is on my to watch list, she's in and got an Oscar for, and it's called If Beale Street Could Talk.
Okay.
And I haven't seen the film, but it's directed by Barry Jenkins, who directed Moonlight. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that film because he makes beautiful films.
There's also a book.
Yeah, so it's a adaptation of a book by James Baldwin. And one of the reasons I haven't seen If Beale Street Could Talk. What?
Who is amazing.
So I have If Beale Street Could Talk, but I haven't finished reading the book. So I'm waiting to finish the book and then I'll watch the movie. So that's why it's on my to watch list. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to that one because from what I heard, it's like a happy-ish ending. I don't know. So I actually don't know. So here's the happy ending, and you know, I want to suggest something that has like a love story.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are the suggestions that I have. Also, one more thing that's on my to watch list, and it's for the same reason as The Hate U Give. I haven't read the book yet. I haven't watched them.
I tried.
Yet. So that's on the to watch list as well.
You're gonna have to set that up when you're ready for like one of those days, you know.
Yeah.
Let me know when you do watch it, Elizabeth, because
The Hate U Give.
Yeah, I actually just recently watched that one, and I had read the book already, and I remember really loving the book, and also just really appreciating the film itself for being true to the themes that were in it, and focusing more on those themes and less on kind of the romantic relationship between Star and her boyfriend, which it gets in there a little bit in the book, but they don't focus on it quite so much in the film. But it was definitely on one of it was a film that did impact me, simply because it shows this duality that some people experience. And I know that I felt similar duality, where you are in a space that is not inhabited by people that look like you, and so you have to find a way to fit into that space. And then when you get home or when you go somewhere else, you have to find a way to fit into that space too. It becomes very hard when those two spaces are at odds, and how to navigate through that. And so I remember reading it and even seeing it and just really understanding Star. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it, for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely have to watch it and read it right away because I think already what you're saying. I can already relate to that. And I think, frankly, a lot of Black people can relate to that. And I think a lot of people can relate to being in a space where they feel like they have to perform something that might not quite be who they are, or maybe it is and they're trying to figure it out. So yeah, I definitely want to see that for sure. Was there any final words that anyone wanted to add in, or any final suggestions or anything before we wrap this up?
Ooh, Dear White People. I started watching the TV show.
Do
you not like that either?
What do you think?
No, I like Dear White People so much that when the trailer for the film came out when I was in college, I donated to the campaign for the film. That's like how bad I wanted Dear White People to come out. So I don't have
to make sure to mention that.
I've not seen the show.
Enjoying the show.
I haven't finished watching. Like I've watched the first 2 seasons of the show, but I kind of fallen off. There's so much to watch.
It's a show and a movie?
Yeah, so it was first a film and then they made it into a movie. And people like the show better, actually, I think. But
that's what I've heard. That's why I started with the TV show.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's like the same characters.
Yeah, it seemed like it. I was looking up and it seemed to be the same story.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Yeah.
I've seen the movie. I haven't seen the show yet. So maybe this weekend.
Yeah. I know that some
better
people
recommendations.
What?
Said I wish I had better recommendations.
No, I think yours are good. I want people.
They're good.
They're good. No, you're making me change my views on some of the things that I watch.
Oh.
No, I mean just really Little Fires Everywhere. I was just really here.
I honestly have very low expectations when a book is adapted to screen. Because sometimes the author isn't always involved in the direction and the production and stuff like that. I feel like the only movie that's kind of lived up to my expectations of book adaptations to film was The Green Mile. I'm not sure if you guys have seen that, but that book was like super thick and the movie was great. So yeah.
Yeah, another movie I've seen clips of, and for whatever reason, no, I don't know. I think it was The Green Mile was like on TV. You know how they'll like play
Right.
So I just watched one scene of it, and I'm like, why am I crying? I haven't even watched the whole entire movie yet. So maybe I probably should add that to the list because I was crying.
Yeah, I used to watch
and I'm like, I haven't even seen it.
Yeah, I used to watch a lot of heavy movies when I was younger for some reason. I don't know why.
Probably searching for those answers, like sometimes again, movies can kind of provide like a little bit of insight that you don't really have the words or you don't really know where to look for it. So
and comfort. And comfort, they provide a lot. It's just like books.
Well, I want to thank all of you so much for this. I think this was a really great conversation, and hopefully people check out some of these films that we talked about and go to them for maybe insight or education or comfort, or even to maybe provide some clarity to some of the things that are going on right now. So I feel free to leave any, comments or suggestions of movies that you are watching and you suggest. And, I highly encourage everyone to connect to the anti-racism resources that PGCMLS has provided to gain more, again, information and insight and to potentially help you on whatever journey you are when it comes to educating yourself about these topics. So thanks again, and you all have a pleasant day or evening. Bye.
Bye.